like Scoob!
Scoob is a strange beast. As a traditional Scooby-Doo movie, it doesn't entirely work, but as a colourful celebration of Hanna-Barbera and the characters many of us grew up watching, I think it's a lot of fun. Let me just start this review by saying I am a huge Hanna-Barbera fan. I grew up with all the reruns on Boomerang, Top Cat, Scooby-Doo, Wacky Races, Dick Dastardly and Muttley and their flying machines. The list is endless. But back onto Scoob. This film came out at a rather interesting time of movie releases, because this released May 2020, at a time when we should have been flocking to cinemas, but 2020 had other plans with the COVID pandemic. So Scoob wasn't released in cinemas, instead going straight to VOD. So we don't really know what the box office for this movie would have been. However, the film begins exactly where you'd expect, showing us how a young Shaggy first met Scooby-Doo and eventually befriends Fred, Daphne and Velma. It's sweet, funny and captures the friendship between Shaggy and Scooby. Surprisingly well as well. Once Mystery Inc. grows up, however, the movie takes a very different turn. Instead of giving us the usual haunted houses, creepy monster and mystery to solve, Scoob turns into a huge superhero adventure involving Blue Falcon, Dynamite, Captain Caveman and gloriously Dick Dastardly. As somebody who grew up watching old Hanna-Barbera cartoons through reruns on Boomerang, I can't pretend I didn't get a massive kick out of seeing these characters again. Dick Dastardly in particular, played by Jason Isaacs, is an inspired choice for the villain. He's ridiculous, threatening and hilarious in equal measure, and Jason Isaacs clearly had fun voicing him. This is where I also completely understand the criticism from Scooby-Doo fans. Fred, Daphne and Velma are surprisingly sidelined for large portions of their own movie. The classic mystery solving formula is abandoned, and there are moments where Scoob feels less like a Scooby-Doo film and more like the opening chapter of a Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe. And well, that's basically what it was trying to be. Warner Brothers clearly had big intentions for these characters, using Scooby and Shaggy as the gateway into a much larger Hanna-Barbera world. Watching it now makes the aspect rather bittersweet, because those plans never really materialised. But judged as a movie we clearly got, rather than the franchise Warner Bros. Hoped it would create, there's still plenty here that I enjoy. The animation is gorgeous, colourful and energetic, with the characters' classic designs translated nicely into CGI. Scooby and Shaggy remain the emotional heart of the film, and their friendship gives the story a genuine warmth underneath all that superhero spaceships and Hanna-Barbera cameos. The voice cast for me was a bit of a mixed bag. Frank Welker thankfully returns as Scooby-Doo, while Will Forte makes for Shaggy. I preferably would have liked to have Matthew Lillard back, but that's a story for another day. Zac Efron, Amanda Seyfried and Gina Rodriguez take on the role of Fred, Daphne and Velma, with Mark Wahlberg joining the Hanna-Barbera madness as Blue Falcon. Is it the Scooby-Doo movie I'd recommend to someone watching the classic Mystery Inc. adventure? Probably not. I'd recommend the old live action films. There's no spooky mansion, very little detective work, and nowhere near enough of the gang pulling masks off distinguished businessmen who would have gotten away with it if it weren't for those meddling kids. But I also think calling Scoob a terrible movie is unfair. It's entertaining, affectionate and occasionally wonderfully nostalgic through the Hanna-Barbera history for viewers who grew up with not only with Scooby-Doo but with Wacky Races, Captain Caveman, Dynamite and a wider Hanna-Barbera catalogue. There's an extra level of enjoyment here. For me, seeing Dick Dastardly appear wasn't a reason to ask why it was in a Scooby-Doo movie. It was just a reason to yell Dick Dastardly. Sometimes nostalgia wins. Scoob may not be particularly traditionally a Scooby-Doo movie, but it's still a pretty enjoyable one.